Try it again.
Test.
Yeah,
Test.
I think it's on. I think your voice is just soft. Yeah, bring that one and give that to Dean. Can pass it along.
All right, Brian, you're good.
Okay. Dean, I'm going to empower you. If someone on that side of the dais has a comment or question, pass the mic. Janet, likewise. No, just one. Just one for the three of them and one for the two of you. Okay? All right. You ready, Ben?
Yep.
Okay.
You're on.
I'd like to call the Saline City Council meeting to order. If you please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Having a little bit of an issue with mics this evening, so please bear with us and be patient. The microphone at the podium should be working, and I think there's 4 operable mics up at the dais this evening. Members present this evening are Council Members Gearbaugh, Rice, Lesh, Harmount, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, and Mayor Marl. From City staff, we have City Manager O'Toole, City Clerk Royal, and Wastewater Treatment Superintendent Briggs. The rest of you who are in the audience this evening, we welcome you. There are copies of the agenda on the back table. We encourage you to sign in, and there's also listening devices if you require them. At this time, the Chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted unless there are amendments.
Move to approve as submitted.
Moved by Lesh to approve as submitted. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Dillon. All those in favor of approving the agenda as submitted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion now to excuse the absence of our council colleague, Mr. Jack Seal?
So moved.
I'll let Gearbaugh be the mover and Mayor Pro Tem Dillon be the second again. All those in favor of excusing the absence, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We come now to the first public comment period, which is limited to agenda items. Under the Open Meetings Act, any person may come forward at this time, make comment or question on an item that appears on this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested, but of course not required, to state his or her name and address for the record. Are there any citizen comments on agenda items? You will have 3 minutes. Please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council, friends, and I rise again and want to share some of my thoughts. And first, I really appreciate Mr. Dean Gerbach want to serve us. I'm the first one, well, maybe not the first one, to support his service to the city of Saline, to people, to everybody. Many things I can say, but you all know that he is one of my favorite, besides with Mr. Mayor also, want to continue to serve us. And that's why this city is so attractive, because of wonderful people. All of you, I vote all of you, and you owe me a lot. Not only because of your services, also your spirit. So, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Gerbach, continue to serve us. Second thing I want to also support Mrs. DeHar to be our leader in the Saline District Library. There are 4 legendary women, more than that. And here is my favorite lady, one of the 4, Mr. Hess. And Linda and Mary, which is, and also together with Leslie. There's a legendary women serve us and set out the example of the city of Saline. That's why it's so attractive. So I want to take this opportunity to say that as Chinese American, I thank all of those ladies. And of course of our favorite lady, and Janet. So those are the legendary women to create a history. Now I want to continue to move on about the listed agenda about this deer issue. Is that on the list? I think. And this is the problem, not the animal's fault. It's the people. And not just tell the city of Saline, the people, to do this and that. It's tell the owners of the properties. Some are HUD supported, some are private, especially apartments. Please, It's not the deer's fault. Some of the leader just totally against the common sense. When I stood up and said, look, just say that, oh, don't feed the deer. That's not enough. So therefore, do something to protect our land, protect our property, especially in public hard support.
Thank you very
property.
much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Are there additional citizen comments on agenda items this evening? Please come forward. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Geraldine, and I'm a member of Protective Parents Michigan. I would like to thank the City of Saline for acknowledging that child safety should be the priority in family court and custody decisions by issuing a proclamation for Family Court Awareness Month. 1 in 3 families are directly impacted by domestic violence, but domestic violence affects all of us and our communities. The health and safety of children and families is directly linked to the well-being and functioning of the community. Proper training on abuse can reduce incidents of domestic violence that might otherwise require more resources to address. When family courts make decisions without proper training on domestic abuse or child abuse, it can lead to families needing more social support, putting an extra strain on local services like shelters, counseling, and child protective services. We all need to be aware of what happens in family court to keep children safe, because when women leave, abuse often escalates and follows them and their children into the family court system. Tragically, abuse is not understood or believed by the courts, and 58,000 children in the U.S. each year are ordered into unsupervised contact with abusive parents. 60% of perpetrators who abuse their spouse will abuse their child. Adverse childhood experiences, such as domestic abuse, negatively impact a child's development, their relationships, and their mental and physical health. Most child abuse.
Said we have the developers to answer any questions. They have provided some additional materials later today, more detailed site plan notes that I'm sure they'd be happy to talk through.
Very good. Thank you, City Manager Ochula. And if my memory serves me correctly, members of the steering committee for this parcel include Council members CEO and Gearbaugh and Mayor Pro Tem Dillon. Is that correct?
Correct.
With you over the past 6 months to a year. Let me begin with Mayor Pro Tem Dillon. Are there any comments that you'd like to make in regards to this proposed purchase agreement?
No, I think it's, what we had talked about as a group was maximizing the space, as you had talked about, and sort of steering developers into what we wanted for the parcel versus just sort of leaving it open for their interpretation. So I'm looking forward to having a robust conversation about it.
Very good. Mr. Gearbaugh, any comments you'd like to make on behalf of the Real Estate Committee?
I think one of the things we were looking at is trying to make sure how this fits in with that development there. Of course, as you said before, site plan concerns and issues on this was dealt with in the planning commission. I think there are some ways the buildings have been located, and especially in the front. And then there was a concern that I brought up that we've always wanted to look towards.
Councilmember Gearbaugh, could you use the microphone?
Talk directly
Yeah.
to the mic.
Yeah, these ones are not quite as sensitive as the other ones.
Is this working?
Yeah.
Yeah, be right close to it. The issue with it is that we were hoping that we'd also connect this property with the Oaks that's next door to it, to the west, and potentially looking at a connection with that, providing more access to this property. I see this goes all the way down. So there'll be some other things that'll come up, I think, during the site plan that will just agree with some of these other issues. I know one of the things that we also mentioned was potentially the more additional density that could happen on this land besides the townhome. So that might be something we may want to talk with the developers.
Very good. Gentlemen, we appreciate your attendance this evening. Would you like to come forward to the podium and talk a little bit about your background and primarily for the public's edification, would you like to elaborate on what you're proposing for this parcel?
Absolutely. Good evening, Council. My name is Michael Hamami with Cambridge Real Estate, commercial real estate developer for the past 22 years, primarily in retail, multifamily, residential, and industrial type developments. We have brought a development here in front of you today for the parcel that is encompassed of 9,500 square feet of proposed retail with a drive-through and up to 27 or so townhomes. The site that we're working on, or that we're taking a look at, is, has two wetland areas that we had to kind of navigate around. So we're hoping to be able to achieve the density that we're putting in front of you today. That's going to be contingent on what we find during the due diligence period to see how we're going to be able to manage the stormwater, whether it's going to have to be some underground retention, or if we're going to be able to figure out a way to do it all with the pond. Now these are all things that we're going to be looking at over the next few months that are coming up, if you guys are willing to approve the purchase agreement here today. If you look at the, if you don't.
Yeah, what slide would you like me to be on?
If you could go forward a little bit. Yep.
I think it's the
That's, yeah, the other way.
this way.
Perfect.
That one?
Yeah,
Yep.
that's good. If you look at the plan in front of you, we did our best to locate the drive directly across the street from the drive to the development across Michigan Avenue. And we understood that it would be important to try to tie into the Zippies, so we did extend the drive there to the east. The amount of townhomes that we're able to fit onto the site really is going to kind of depend on the size of that detention basin that we have there to the east. We're proposing 27, and we're hoping that's what we could achieve. It might be as low as 21, depending on how these fit. The townhome product that we're looking to bring in is similar to what you see at Berwick Park, which is to the west. These will be townhomes that are 2 and 3 bedroom units in that 16 to 1,700 square foot range. The retail that we're looking to bring in is we're fortunate to have some users that are interested right now. The end cap would be a drive-through, and the rest of it would be inline retail.
Any additional slides you'd like to have us put on the screen?
So,
Discuss?
absolutely. This slide is a sample floor plan of similar type product that we'd like to introduce. This is a 2-bedroom product, entry-level garage, second floor dining, living, and then the bedrooms would be on the 3rd floor. This is also a rendering and elevation of the type of product that we'd be looking to introduce.
That's the end of your slides.
That's the end of it, okay. And this is some more examples of kind of what you see, very similar to what you see in Berwick Park. If you could go back one more slide.
This one and the other way.
Right there, yeah. And this is what we're looking to introduce as far as the 9,500 square foot of retail that we could try to fit along Michigan Avenue.
So that facility has essentially 2 suites, is that correct?
The retail?
Yes.
No, the retail would have 3, if not 4, depending on how how it lays out with the users.
Gentlemen, anything else you'd like to add?
I think that covers it. And
Okay. Why don't you hang tight there at the podium in the event that there are questions that are best addressed by you or your associate. We'll open it up for questions, in particular those members who are not part of the steering committee, since this is maybe relatively new for the 3 of you. So the chair would welcome any questions or concerns that you have at this time, either for staff, members of the steering committee, or the developers. I'll start at the end with Councilmember Harmount and then transition to Councilmember Rice. And please make sure you have the cordless mic in front of you.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I'll talk close to this. So you said the retail was 3 and the drive-through, or 3 including the drive-through space?
we'd be looking to do 3, possibly 4 units. That's including the
Okay,
drive-through.
got it. Thank you for the clarification. Are you looking at any sort of built-in environmental sustainability to help with the overall cost of ownership?
We would be investigating those types of aspects to the development once we are able to get it under contract, get site control, and then we could start looking at some of those opportunities.
Okay, and you said that they're 2-bedroom, and we're targeting what for sale price?
So these are 2 and 3 bedroom units, so they'd be mixed in based on the layout. The last sale in Berwick Park was in June, and that was at about $250 a square foot. We'd probably be targeting these at somewhere a little bit more than that, probably closer to the $300 a square foot based on today's construction prices. So these will probably be opening up at $399 and up.
Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice?
One thing that I just want to say out loud for the city manager is that that would absolutely require a light, because that is a very high risk exit from the Forvia plant. We already have a lot of accidents there, so if there's potential of people going directly across that street. Anyway, so one of my concerns is the density of this space. Do you all have any experience with the mixed-use retail living where retail's on the bottom, living's on the top, those types of situations? Because I feel like in this stretch of Michigan Avenue, we're kind of running into like continuing to just build these individual buildings and kind of like blocking ourselves in. So like, for instance, up on Ann Arbor Saline Road across from Meyer, you've got the retail at the bottom, you've got living up above, and there's other types of living behind it where there isn't retail on the bottom, things like that. I would like to see the density higher than only potentially 20 homes at $400,000 a piece. That's where my heart stops a little bit on this one. I like that this, the concept of mixed use is happening here. I just am concerned about the low density and the high cost. That's my concern.
Go ahead, just eliminate it based on the wetlands.
Yeah, so to answer your first question, yes, I have quite a bit of experience in the mixed-use developments. I've done quite a few of those projects. We developed a big chunk of like West Dearborn's downtown area with that mixed-use product, and it works well in a downtown walkable district. With this type of product up on Michigan Avenue, we had some site challenges to be able to obtain, to achieve something more dense with it's kind of like bottlenecked up there on Michigan, and then it opens up into the back. So we didn't feel a multi-story structure would be conducive to that, the land layout. And the density in the rear part, we're dealing with a lot of wetlands. It's low lands over there, so we try to lay it out to where we would still be able to achieve the most amount of density while being cognizant of the development costs that are going to have to be implemented over here. It's got some challenges with it, but we're hoping to achieve at least that level of density of 27 units.
I'm just, this is probably more for the city manager and the community development director. It's just, future planning for the city of Saline. We always look at, 25 years down the road, should the Forvia plant go away? 25 years down the road, should this go away? Should that go away? This little pocket of townhomes makes me a little bit nervous that we're going to, kind of box that in a little bit and then have fewer options for the future as far as kind of mixed use goes. So that's my only concern. I like that we're working with a developer that has these skills and has this thought process. So I'm, my heart says y'all kind of can help work this out in the planning process, that y'all know what you're kind of talking about here. Those are just my concerns for if we approve this tonight and it moves into the future for Planning Commission.
Very good, thank you. Before I come back to Mayor Pro Tem Dillon and Councilmember Gearbaugh, Mr. Lesh, do you have any questions regarding this proposal?
I like the concept. I like the idea that you're using the whole site, which is something that's been a problem for finding somebody that would use the whole site. The south side of it obviously kind of backs up to commercial / industrial. I know it's a long ways out, has to go through planning and everything, but I assume you're going to be putting in some sort of tree screening or something just to give a break between those commercial, industrial things to all those townhomes that.
Absolutely, yes, that would be something that we definitely want to implement here.
Yeah. Anyway, I like the general concept.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lesh. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, and then I'll jump to Councilmember Gearbox.
Thank you. So as far as the layout, I have to agree with what's been said. I'm not in favor of $400,000 condos right now. I think we keep talking about attainable housing, diversified housing. That's creating more of what we have. I would like to see higher density. I'd like to see rental properties instead of for sale homes. So I'd like to see that property maximized as far as that element of the property. Now, as far as the retail part, I have a great concern about having a drive-through up there right now because currently you're talking about having people cutting through the Zippy's car wash, which is an issue in and of itself that you've got cars coming, going, and backing up all in the same space. Councilmember Rice had mentioned traffic. I think that we would definitely need to look at that. You know, I would rather see a fast casual full-on restaurant than smaller in and outs, something where there's going to be an extended stay, utilizing that space. I mean, in my opinion, that's what I would rather see in that space. I appreciate what you've brought forward. And so I know that this is a very first blush of it. But to that extent, I mean, I wanted to talk about the contract a little bit and the due diligence periods. So the initial due diligence is 180 days. So we've got 6 months. And then we're offering 2 more due diligence for another 6 months. And so we're looking at tying up this property for a year before there's even anything possible that it could be a no-go. And that makes me a little bit nervous that we're not fully on board with the design, you're not fully sure what can happen, and that we might end up a year down the road and be back to it's not a workable space for your project. So I am concerned about the length of time for the due diligence.
So I will just note, I mean, the last property the city sold, the due diligence period from the time of purchase agreement execution to planning commission approvals was about 10 months. So that is a relatively reasonable time frame, somewhere between 6 and 12 months. That is why we do the non-refundable deposit for the extensions, specifically so that we know developers are still serious, and again, they're not just trying to tie land up speculatively. I believe in this case, these developers have already indicated they have potential retail tenants lined up, so I don't have as much of a concern that this is a speculative offer.
Okay.
Earlier this evening made reference to developments in Pittsfield Township along Ann Arbor Saline Road, just south of the city limits with Ann Arbor. That would be adjacent to Target Myers. And I really like what's been done there over the past decade, which is aesthetically pleasing buildings close to the property line with the parking in the rear. I think that is a very attractive look, and this is just a matter of personal preference, but I don't personally find it very appealing to come into a municipality and just see a sea of asphalt and concrete. I like to see buildings and landscaping. I think that's much more appealing. There was also a reference made earlier this evening about a connecting drive to the Oaks Shopping Center directly to the west. And that was actually first proposed and discussed nearly 20 years ago when that development was constructed. I would be pretty emphatic on that point that a drive ought to be constructed so that we can move some of that traffic, vehicular traffic, into that adjacent shopping center and then out to where a light currently exists at Michigan Ave and Hopper Drive. Many of my colleagues made reference to density. I think there's some modifications and alterations that can be made to increase the density, and to expand the housing stock that you're proposing on site. Again, I think it's important for the public to know that what's proposed this evening is very preliminary. It has to go through the planning and zoning process. It has to have engineering reviews. Obviously, because of its proximity to US 12, MDOT will have to be engaged. Much like Councilmember Gearbaugh, I concur that the due diligence period is appropriate. As you indicated earlier, because of the extensive amount of wetlands on site, this particular project is fraught with some challenges. So I think you'll need every bit of 6 months, 6 to 8 months minimum to get through the planning and zoning process. I also serve on the Planning Commission and have for the past 13 years, so I'm well aware of the time frame and the sort of cadence of how developments proceed through that process. So overall, I think this has got a lot of potential. Again, I think there's some tweaks and modifications that can be made along the way. I look forward to working with you, and we'll be voting in favor of the subsequent motion, hopefully to approve the contract with Cambridge Real Estate LLC.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yep. If there's nothing further, we do have a motion on the floor simply to acknowledge receipt. That was moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by Dillon. All those in favor of acknowledging receipt signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion now to approve or not to approve?
Move to approve.
Moved by Lesh to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Gearbaugh. Is there any additional discussion? City Manager O'Toole, do you care to make any additional comments?
No.
Okay. Is there no additional discussion? Mr. Gearbaugh?
Just a couple of things that we've been talking about, those are all part of this whole due diligence period.
Yes, I'm happy to touch base with the developers after this meeting, assuming that this is approved, and I'm sure future iterations that get presented will be reflective not only of their due diligence, but some of the notes that were received here tonight before it goes to planning.
Thank you.
Any additional comments? We have a motion on the floor that moved by Lesh, seconded by Gearbaugh to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Gentlemen, thank you. Appreciate your time. Look
Thank
forward
you.
to working with you. Have a great evening. We move on to new business item 24-201, wastewater treatment plant rehabilitation project, Arcadis Support Services Amendment. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo from City Manager O'Toole and to approve or not to approve the amendment for as-needed support services with Arcadis for wastewater treatment rehabilitation project in the amount of $100,000.
Move to acknowledge and to approve.
Moved by Gearbaugh to acknowledge and to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, boy. I'm gonna go with Rice on that one. I'll get you on the next one, Councilmember Harmon. Those seconds were articulated almost simultaneously to one another. City Manager O'Toole, can I start with you? And then if you'd like to defer to wastewater treatment superintendent Briggs, I would welcome that.
So this is just a renewal of our existing as-needed service agreement with Arcadis. They've been working with us as an owner's rep on the wastewater treatment plant rehabilitation project. We've been estimating about $100,000 spent annually for those services. We're just coming to the end of our last approval, which would have been the second amendment to that contract, so we're refreshing. I don't anticipate this full amount will be spent within this fiscal year, so certainly if a budget amendment is needed in the future, we will articulate that, but at this time, we do have dollars allocated.
Very good. Mr. Briggs, any additional comments you'd like to make? Not necessary? And then City Manager O'Toole, can you remind me, I believe this item was discussed at the Asset Management Working Committee, is that correct?
Correct. This was actually discussed both at the Asset Management Subcommittee as well as the Risk Mitigation, is that a working group? I forget what the title, yeah.
Well, let me start then to my left. Councilmember Lesh, as a member of the Asset Management Working Committee, is there anything you'd like to add regarding this proposal?
No, it's pretty straightforward.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, I believe you're also a representative on that group?
Correct. No, my only question was,
Let's hold off on questions. I'm just looking for comments if you have them in your capacity as a member of that working group.
okay, thank
Do
you.
you have any comments or no?
No.
Okay. Mr. Gearbaugh?
Well, as a representative of both risk management and the asset management, a lot of this recommendation to proceed with Arcadis was brought forward by our citizen members, Lori Champion and Tom Rabaugh. Our concern is that with this being such a massive project, any hiccups, any concerns where we would really want to have a representative representing the city to check, double check, and basically provide assistance, should we need that at some point, we wanted to reiterate this time. It was a concern that came up from two individuals that have dealt strongly with projects like this in the past, because Tom used to work for Tetra Tech and for Champion being a large professional in risk management, understood the concerns. And as we look at this project, getting it to happen and to make sure that we have the backup should, God forbid, anybody gets into a situation where we don't have individuals available or something happens, we're going to be set up for this. And that was part of the concern why we wanted to have this continue and provide it as a double check and a potential assistance to the city manager, because she's recently had to take on a role of being our community development director for a while. And so those type of things happen, and we need to make sure that we have the ability to actually transfer this over if we have to.
Very good. Excellent. Questions from the dais? Ms. Dillon, did you have some questions? Now I'll jump
I
to
did.
Councilmember Rice.
It was just a funding question, and it said that for our economic impact, it was going to be spread across 2 fiscal years. Is it just a 50-50 split? or
No,
any-
there's currently about 38,000 left in that line item budget for this year. I anticipate we'll use that full amount this year, and like I said, if we're approaching needing to increase the line item budget for this in this year, we'll do that as part of the normal amendment process, but it will be split, and there's likely to be another renewal before we close out the project, and maybe for a little bit of time afterwards. So it's possible this won't be the last amendment you see to that original contract, but this certainly buys us a lot of runway.
Thank you. And is Arcadis providing updates to you? Are they providing status reports, concern issues? How is that working as to what they are doing?
So what Arcadis will be doing is, one, participating in the monthly meetings that we host, two, looking at any requests for information or change orders that are coming through, particularly anything that's going to require a change to the scope or a change in engineering specifications for the project. Really, it's the things that fall outside of my or Superintendent Briggs's expertise. Certainly, I can help manage the budget on this project, and he can help make sure that operations are in line with our expectations, but having that additional engineering expertise to look at changes that are occurring in real time. Or, for example, when we identify issues such as we have with a chimney on one of the buildings, to determine, get us, another set of eyes on whether or not we change that out or repair that as part of this project or not.
But they are not a shadow to Tetra Tech, correct? In that they're not checking their work. They're just looking at specific situations.
Yes, they're largely looking, they've really already double-checked their work. I mean, that's what we hired them to do originally. The design specifications have been fully reviewed by Arcadis, and that's what went into our bid documentations and has now been accepted. So when we have changes to those specifications, we'd have them looking again.
But they are not, just for clarification, so they're not checking the work product.
Correct. They're not inspecting the work product. Tetra Tech is still performing that work. They have a full-time inspector on site, in addition to our own inspections that we require for building, mechanical, electrical, things like that.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Rice.
This is probably for Superintendent Briggs. So I'll wait just a moment so you can get settled. Sorry.
That's fine.
So as far as this relationship goes, how, I see that we've said that the relationship has gone well. How have we made any adjustments? Or are there specific things that they have been able to bring to you that we've made some adjustments, we've taken their recommendations? Like, how is that relationship working currently?
Well, I don't believe we've had any adjustments at this point in time. But they did, like Ms. O'Toole said, that they did go over the documents that we had before we even got started, and that helped make sure that we weren't missing anything, that Tetra Tech wasn't missing anything. It's
So
kind of just another set of eyes kind of thing.
Perfect. For the past year's contract that we've had with them, what have they been doing?
Mostly they've been going over the plan itself. I don't remember specifically. Have they made any specific suggestions? I don't think they did that changed anything.
Most of what we were doing, because they were with us from the very beginning of design engineering, we were having dialogue. So when questions would come up, we'd get both Tetra Tech's opinion and Arcadis' opinion on which made sense, what decision made sense for us. Very involved in conversations around sizing and whether the wet weather storage was the right solution, which ultimately we did end up involved in conversations around whether that would be buried or not buried, things of that nature. And to that end, also reviewing the bids that came in. So, both Arcadis and Tetra Tech reviewed the bids we received, and, there was pretty much unanimous consensus that the contractor we selected was not only the lowest bid, but met the qualifications and needs for our project. That's largely been it to date. To Superintendent Briggs's point, we haven't had too many significant changes to the actual scope of the project. The hope is it stays that way.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
Do we foresee this rhythm that we have with them being the same as we move forward into the next contract?
At this point in time, I believe so. I
Okay.
mean, anything could happen, but, they start digging, sometimes you find stuff that you don't realize is underground, but I don't think that's going to change the direction of anything. It might change how we accomplish getting to that point, but I don't think it's going to change the end product at this point in time.
Okay. So we're paying them by the hour, correct?
Yes, we pay an hourly wage, so it's as needed.
And
It's
this
a
is
flat
not to
rate.
exceed $100,000? So
Correct.
What, did we get to our $100,000 last?
We're a couple $1,000s shy of it at this point.
Okay, so this is kind of proper cadence, proper setting. I just want to make sure, this is kind of something that we don't have a lot of visibility on.
Yeah.
This project, I just kind of want to make sure that we're making a decision, that we're using, the time and the money wisely, and that we're accepting any, feedback from this group, and that things are all sort of cohesive going forward. We're using them kind of in the same manner that we have
Yes.
in the past.
Yes, we had, in the beginning, we had quite a few meetings with them alone discussing the project, and of course, they were picking our brain to make sure that we were getting what we wanted out of the project. So I think right now they've done a very good job confirming what we believe is going on.
Okay, all right, I think that's all I wanted. I just wanted to check in with how this contract's going.
Very good. Thank you. Additional questions, Councilmember Harmon?
Yeah, this is a huge project, and I think it's really important to have oversight. I do have a question about, are they taking on any liability of any sort with the project that they're consulting?
No, Tetra Tech remains the engineer of record. So, ultimately, Tetra Tech is the one who holds the liability for the project. This is really about working more closely with our staff, again, because neither Superintendent Briggs nor I have the engineering technical skills to look at some of these questions. And certainly, Tetra Tech is there to support us in that effort, but to Council's point, this is a very large project. We want to do it right. In my mind, I view this as an insurance plan.
I think it's I agree with that. I think in addition to that, I think it's really important to continue to log and identify value add of this position and where they're adding value and providing service.
I will note, I think one thing that came to mind after we were talking, they were instrumental in the decision to accelerate the timeline for a temporary bar screen rink. So that was something that they assisted us with, very, very instrumental in getting that set up, which is incredibly helpful, as we know, to ultimately help the downstream processes at the wastewater treatment plant. So I think that has been a very successful component of their work so far.
Very good. Are there additional questions? Mr. Gearbaugh?
Not so much a question, but just I think one of the other things too is, this is going to be a very complex system when we get into not only the technical side of it, but the technology and the software of it. And so I believe that having another set of eyes assisting with that, just to help out our own IT director or wherever it's going, will be an effective way of utilizing this company.
Very good. Any additional discussion on the motion? Then we have a motion on the floor moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by Rice, to acknowledge and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Last new business item of the evening is 24-202, well number 7 change order. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the memo from Superintendent Briggs and to approve or not to approve the change order for well 7 installation project for a total amount not to exceed $320,825, and to authorize or not authorize the city treasurer to amend line item 591-537-972-005.
Move to acknowledge.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Dillon simply to acknowledge receipt, and that was seconded by Mr. Gearbaugh. City Manager O'Toole, would you like to begin?
I'll turn it over to, Superintendent Briggs.
Superintendent Briggs, the floor is yours.
So upon subsequent communications with Eagle of Michigan, there were several things that we kind of missed in our original view of getting well 4 or well 7 put in. One of which was, they wanted some things like floor drains and some ventilation and things like that we didn't really, I hadn't put thought into when we initially started this project. But so that because of that and because of upsizing things, we found out that the original hut that we'd planned to put over the well was not going to be tall enough. That hut was about not much more than 7 or 7.5 feet tall internally, and turns out that the motor on top of the well is about 8 feet above the floor. So we had to do something different. And the difference between a hut and the prefab construction, concrete construction that we're looking at doing, a larger hut wouldn't have been much difference. It actually might have been more expensive from the feedback I got from Peerless about that. And so the larger hut also, larger prefab also gives us more room to work inside around the well. We were going to be on a premium for being able to move around the well itself and do service and do maintenance and things like that. Plus we added some items like a flow meter that wasn't in there originally in the plan, some other piping. So all in all, it's an increase in ability to work on it and the space that we need to house the thing to begin with. We are, because we talked about taking that hut and building a higher foundation and just setting the hut on top of it, but by the time we got into the foundation and everything, it was pretty much a wash. Plus the building wasn't any bigger in footprint. So that's one of the reasons we went to the prefab concrete for doing this. And because of that, then we also needed some mechanical engineering. So then we hadn't envisioned needing that before, but now with this new prefab hut or prefab concrete and the need for the mechanical inside work, wiring, electrical, that kind of stuff, then we needed to have an engineer take a look at that. So that's part of the increased Tetra Tech's cost to do that. And the additional work that Midwest Power was going to have to do, there's an increase in cost in that because of the change in the prefab. And that's pretty much most of, Peerless also, because that motor's been sitting for 2 years, there's probably some potential flat spots in the bearings and such. So Peerless is going to go through that motor as part of that cost that they're increasing the cost on. And I also put in a little bit of contingency money just because nothing ever seems to go the way exactly you want it to. So that gives us a little cushion to absorb any extra costs.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Briggs. City Manager O'Toole, anything you'd like to add?
No, I think at this time, we understand the need. I'm disappointed by the regulatory environment that we are kind of contained or forced to operate within because of certain requirements that it places on us. I would have liked more expediency and clarity up front with this project, but we do know the necessity of it. And at this point, it's still very much within our capacity to execute. I'm not concerned about the ability to pay this additional increase. We can certainly use capital reserve funds to do that. That's exactly what they're there for. Just knowing up front certainly would have been the preferred path.
Can I follow up on that and get some confirmation? So in the opening portion of your remarks, you mentioned sort of a laundry list of items that Eagle is now requiring. We've been in conversations with them for many, many, many months now. Were any of
Yes.
these items articulated in the past, or were these things that were added yet again at the 11th hour?
No, well, the last communication I got from the Eagle representative gave me a list of about 10 or 12 items that he wanted to see. And one of those was a more precise drawing, maybe, engineering design for what was going to happen. He wants to know the exact position of the well inside the structure, things like that, that we were kind of, Midwest was kind of, had them under control, but it wasn't enough for the representative from Eagle to be satisfied. So that's kind of what started driving some of this. And that was, I got that letter from him, I don't have the date. It's been a couple of months because it's taken me a little while to get all this figured out. But the interesting thing about that is I get the letter from them he wants this information back. Okay, fine. And I think it was not more than 2 weeks later, I got a reminder from them, oh, by the way, we want this information. So even though it's taken them months to get back to us with this final letter, that, they're kind of like, well, where's the information? Where's the information? So unfortunately, it's taken me, like I say, probably close to 2 months to get this all pulled together, trying to figure out what we're going to do to satisfy that letter. So I don't know if that answers your question well enough or not.
It does. I'm not pleased with the answer, but that's not a reflection on your performance, sir. It's, I don't appreciate an ever-evolving goal line, and if a good communication is a two-way street.
Correct.
So if your expectation is that we respond expeditiously, I think it's fair to assume that they would also respond expeditiously, and it seems like there's not a lot of, that didn't happen. So
No.
I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Are there questions from the dais regarding this proposal? Mayor Pro Tem Dillon?
Thank you. I just want some clarification as to the cost, because I was a little confused in the memo. So we've already approved $277,000. It looks like now we're adding $325,000.
No, that's the new project total. So the increase.
No.
We're adding, okay.
No.
So then we should have the total project cost as the.
Yes.
Yes.
3,000.
Let's articulate that then in the subsequent motion.
Okay.
Now, at the moment, we just have a motion to acknowledge receipt from Mayor Pro Tem Dillon and Councilman Reardon.
So that is correct then. It is an increase of $325,000.
Correct.
Correct.
And we should have the not to exceed as the action item for the total project
Right.
cost.
Okay. And then where is the money coming from?
Well, the additional cost is coming from capital reserves.
Okay. We seem to be doing a lot of budget adjustments lately. I think we're going to have a meeting and sort of kind of understand like where we're left in some of these things. Our costs seem to be having a lot of overruns, and just understanding that we're not just proverbial running the well dry on things. I understand that Eagle has made some asks of us. I'm a little disappointed that Tetra Tech didn't tell us that there would be requirements more than what we had initially assumed.
Tetra Tech was not originally involved in the engineering on this. This
Right.
was originally just conceived with,
With Peerless Midwest and myself, pretty much. And I was trying to, I was trying to get it done as inexpensively as possible and as expeditiously as possible, but neither one of those worked out.
No, I appreciate that. So, Mr. Briggs, I got two quick questions for you. One is will our other wells require similar housing at some point?
They already have.
They have.
They
that,
have,
they meet
yes.
that same criteria, the drinking
Yes.
floors and all of
Yes.
this stuff right now?
Yes, they have that.
Okay. So I appreciate that. And now, where are we in timeframe? Because, I mean, it's been 2 years we've been waiting to put this well on.
Well, it's going to take Tetra Tech 3 to 4 weeks to get the drawings done, at which point we submit everything back to Eagle, because that's part of what they wanted. And then it depends on them to determine to what point in time we actually get the permit. And once we get the permit, I've been told it's 2 months thereabouts to actually finish the construction and hook the well up and have it up and running. So you're looking at least 3 months right now, potentially longer depending on the delay from Eagle.
Okay. And with it becoming winter season, is the weather going to be a factor?
It quite possibly could be. I'm going to, after this meeting, hopefully if you approve everything, I'm going to be talking to Midwest, because they're going to be the ones that are going to be doing the foundation work and that kind of thing. So I'm going to talk to them about time frame for that and see what kind of potential, I mean, because that work could be fairly early in the 2 month time frame to finish. I mean, you got to get the foundation, the piping in the ground and all that kind of stuff before you actually worry about putting the well in service. So I could see that being earlier, and who knows what the winter's going to be like weather-wise. You know, I don't know. The only upside is we don't have to worry about warming anything to have concrete dry or anything like that. Like, we're not putting up a block wall in the middle of winter or anything like that. This hut is going to become complete and set over the top of everything.
Thank
So.
you very much.
Any additional questions? Councilmember Harmar?
Yeah, can you remind me, what is the urgency of this? Is this an immediate, needs to be done project, or what was the urgency time-wise?
Well, the urgency with this is because we have the amount of water that we have the potential to need in the city of Saline is we're pretty much when we're at high levels of demand right now, all 4 wells are running. So if anything happens to any one of those wells, we might not produce enough water.
So the only thing I'm going to kind of hear what Mayor Pro Tem Dillon mentioned is that this is a $320,000 increase. That is more than the original estimate? That
Yes.
The increase is actually more than the original estimate
Yes.
was. That's a huge, big variance, and I guess I would want to know, are we going to have an additional variance because of the weather? You know, is there a way?
I don't foresee that. The thing I'm worried about with the weather is potentially delaying finishing of it. But I think, I can't really draw any complete conclusions because I don't know how long it's going to take to get the permit. We're not allowed to do anything until we get the permit. So once we get the permit, then they can start putting foundations in and doing that kind of thing. So if it takes 3 months to get the permit, you know, that puts us into next year sometime before we actually get it finished.
I'm just concerned about delays and
Yeah.
weather and
I agree.
exceeding additionally, so.
Well, the cost shouldn't be exceeded because, like I say, that the work that needs to be done shouldn't be affected by the weather itself. Only if we get enough weather that freezes the ground solid 3 feet down, then we might have a problem.
Any additional questions? Councilmember Rice?
So it is not hyperbole to say that if one of our wells goes down,
We
we
could
may
have a
not
problem.
have enough water to.
In fact, it happened within the last, I don't remember the exact time frame, but well 3 went down on us. We were fortunate enough to be able to purchase another pump. The pump in well 3 had been there for quite a time, and it just failed. Luckily, we were able, I think it only took us like 2 days to get a new well pump and put it back into service, which was I thought, pretty amazing. But, you know, that's the kind of thing we face.
Correct me if I'm wrong, we are going into a low usage season.
Yes, we
correct?
are.
Okay, good.
So we should actually be able to keep up most of the time with just 2 wells running through the winter. So that gives us a little relief.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions? Mr. Gearbow?
I had the opportunity to talk to Jeff Irwin this afternoon and asked him if he was aware of our problem, and unfortunately he wasn't. I mean, he's the chair of the Appropriation Committee for Eagle, so, and in one of his comments, I mentioned, yeah, we're trying to fight it, this is supposed to be an emergency. And he's like, well, it's been 2 years, it doesn't seem like it's an emergency. I don't know how to respond back to him for that, but I do know that, we've been working on this. I've made it a priority to keep asking you about it.
Right.
Consideration. The city manager has tried to reach out on this and all that. My concern is, how do we get Eagle to help speed this up because of this emergency situation? But also, I know you've built up better relationships with Eagle, so now it's like, where do you come from on this in order to try and get them to advance?
Right.
This? And for me, this is where the frustration is, and I don't know how we as a council or as a city can get this through to Eagle to assist. So if this permit isn't going to be issued, and potentially isn't issued for another 3 or 4 months, we're way into another season before we can do anything, correct?
Well, yeah, potentially, yes. I'm going to have a conversation with the representative from Eagle, probably yet this week, and ask if, hopefully I can get him on the phone, and ask him what his time frame would be if, once we get the information, all the information to him that he wants, and what kind of time frame. Because the part of the problem with Eagle has been staffing. So our engineer, that's normally our engineer and usually fairly responsive, has been over in another district, helping do things over there because they don't have enough people. And so sometimes anything that's going on in the Jackson district just kind of falls by the wayside because he gets wrapped up over there. So it's not, I don't think any of it's intentional. I just think it's not the first time that I've called Eagle and asked them where the permit is, and it's done, it's on my desk. I'll have to go into work, because a lot of them work from home now. Go into work and I'll send it to you. And so it's not the first time I've run into.
So perhaps, and maybe this is for City Manager O'Toole, and I'm willing to go up to meet with Senator Irwin, is that we have a timeline on this and understand for him that if he's going to appropriate funds, we know where he needs to appropriate them or ask for them. I just feel it's unsatisfactory for us at this point in time. And I understand that now we're having to put more money into it. I know that has to do with planning. And so in the future, we need to bring in the experts, I think. No offense, Bill. But
No, I agree.
bring in individuals like that. I know you can run the plant. It's just these type of things, and knowing that if Eagle's going to change the rules and regulations on us, then we need to make sure we have it in place. So more of a statement that I've been making, but this needs to happen, and I just don't know how well we can please the competition if this is speed up. So at this point, that's my statement.
Yeah, City Manager O'Toole, I would suggest once the paperwork and permit is processed, that your office make direct contact with Representative Brayback and Senator Irwin, and encourage them to reach out to the Legislative Liaison's office for Eagle to see what can be done to speed up the review and approval process. Obviously, we expect and we should demand as citizens of the great state of Michigan that these types of applications be thoughtfully and carefully considered, but in my judgment, 3 months is excessive. I think a review and approval period or rejection, if the application is incomplete, should be more in like the 3 to 4 week range, not a quarter of a year. So that would be my suggestion, is a simple phone call or email to both of those offices, confirming that the application has been submitted and encouraging them to reach out to the Office of Legislative Liaison on our behalf. Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
One last question?
Yes.
I just want to reiterate that we discussed at our last meeting, sending some requests to our representatives. I feel very strongly that this, as a council, we should probably write a letter and send it as well and ask, pay attention to this project. Our city manager will be contacting you when these things go through. I would like us to do that if we're all amenable to it.
Very good.
Now, just as an aside, I'll give you an idea of one of the reasons it's taken this long to get to this point at the council is I had to get quotes for everything that we're going to do. So it took a month to get a quote on the prefab building, and then to ensure that it was going to have all the openings in it that we needed. And then a period of time from Midwest to get their quote on what the additional costs were going to be. So it wasn't like I've been sitting on this for, a couple of months. It's just.
This is more for me, is this whole process for 2 years. I think you
Yes.
information, but also this whole process and how we do going forward. I don't know if we plan on doing additional wells in the future, we need to make sure what we do.
Right, well, in the future, we'll start on the other side of things and plan everything out with an engineer to begin with, and then we'll be able to get RFQs and that kind of thing and move it in the right direction, hopefully.
I think it's acceptable to ask Eagle what their standard lead time is.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate
You're
that.
welcome.
There's a motion on the floor moved by Gearbaugh, seconded by, moved by Dillon, seconded by Gearbaugh to acknowledge receipt of the memo from Superintendent Briggs. All those in favor of acknowledging receipt signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. Is there a motion now to approve or not to approve and to authorize, not authorize?
Move to approve and authorize.
Moved by Rice to approve and to authorize. Is there a second? Oh, yes, we need, excuse me.
Change the dollar amount.
Yep, can the city manager confirm the dollar amount?
$603,120.
State that one more time.
603,120.
Okay. And it was to not exceed, correct?
Correct.
Could the clerk, if I could trouble you, would you read back the language that we think we ought to be considering?
The change order for well number 7, installation project for a total amount not to exceed $603,120, and to authorize the city treasurer to amend line item 591-536-972-005.
You comfortable making that motion?
Yes.
Councilman Rice?
Yep.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it if we add, to amend the line in the amount of 3. There's two different things.
Yep.
There should be already $277,000 in the budget, right?
So you want to do for a total project amount not to exceed 603,120 and to amend line item 591-536-972-005 in the amount of $320,825.
That's not correct, that number. It's not what's in the memo.
Three,
It's 325, 820.
820?
Yes.
325,
325, 820.
820.
State that number one more time, if you would, Mayor Pro Tem Dillon.
325, 820.
Okay, so going back to Councilmember Rice, you good with the additional language as presented by Mr. Gearbaugh?
Yes, I
Okay.
appreciate that.
And Mr. Gearbaugh, you're going to be the second to that motion? Okay, everyone clear on the motion?
Yes.
Okay. City Clerk Royal, you've got the modified language? Okay, very good. Is there any additional discussion on the motion? Appears to be none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you all. We move on to the discussion portion of our agenda. First up is reports, updates from commissions and committees, and other announcements. I'm going to start to my left and then to my right. Councilmember Harmount, do you have any reports, announcements that you'd like to share at this time?
I do not.
Councilmember Rice.
I do not.
Councilmember Gearbaugh.
Just planning commission is canceled this week. The agenda item did not come back, so we'll be having our first meeting in November.
Just one, which is 2 weeks ago Friday, myself, Mayor, she'd make a fine mayor, but City Manager O'Toole, IT Director Shonk, who's the liaison to our Environmental Commission and a member of our Environmental Commission, toured the Arbor Hills MRF Landfill Recycling Center, which is technically in Salem Township in Washtenaw County. It was very informative. I had forwarded all of you the PowerPoint presentation that they shared with us, and I think they will be they are an interested party in obtaining a countywide contract if we transition in 2025 or beyond to to one contract for most, or if not all, of the municipalities in Washtenaw County for recycling, yard waste, and trash. So if you have any additional questions, please feel free to correspond to my office or to the city manager. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, any reports, announcements, or updates from committees or commissions?
Not at this meeting.
Okay, Mr. Lesh? All right. I believe it was intended that Assistant City Manager Cole was going to provide an update on deer management, which was an item that was discussed about a month back, but in her absence, I'm going to defer to City Manager O'Toole.
Yes, so Deputy City Manager Cole has provided for you all a nice memo on some of the information that she's learned about the situation to date, as well as future activities. Broadly speaking, DNR is very much aware of the issue. They have a new program where they will be monitoring deer population over the next 3 years to understand migration patterns better. And there is now a deer management initiative in Michigan, which is looking at best practices from other states. So Deputy City Manager Cole has been in contact with our liaisons at DNR to discuss this, and they will be out again to speak with her about, what best practices they're identifying. But certainly in the future, we want to hit it hard in the spring, messaging to residents. Please don't do anything to encourage deer into the community. This also includes, messaging on what sort of plantings are deterrents to deer as opposed to attractants of them. And if the populational issues continue to be an issue locally, there are some action items which are outlined in the memo that we could discuss choosing to take.
My only suggestion, City Manager O'Toole, is I'm very much in favor of doing some robust messaging in the spring, but I would prefer not to wait to spring to do some messaging this fall. And that would include social media posts, something in our printed FYI newsletter, and also an email blast to our condo and HOA associations. Again, outlining what the existing policy is, why the policy is in place. It's to prevent wildlife, i.e. deer, from being in neighborhoods, and that there are ramifications to violating the existing policy and ordinance. Obviously, we don't want to be punitive. We're not in the business of providing tickets or citations unless it's absolutely necessary. We're looking for compliance. But I support, as you just articulated, some strong messaging in the spring, but I'd also like to do some this fall. Let me start to my left again and to my right to see if there's any questions or comments for the city manager. Again, this was a project or an initiative that the assistant city manager has pursued, so in the event that the city manager is unable to address your question or concern this evening, we will relay it to L. Cole and follow up either in a weekly communique or at our subsequent council meeting. Councilmember Harmount.
I don't know. Look forward to hearing more about the action plan.
Okay. Councilmember Rice.
I would like to request that the assistant city manager or deputy city manager and or our DNR representative join us at a Parks Commission meeting in the future. Doesn't have to be anytime, within the next couple of months. But I think learning more about this through Parks Commission, and we will also invite our Friends of the Parks program volunteers to that meeting as well. I think the more that we are educated on this topic, the more that we can kind of spread the information throughout the town and, make some good changes throughout our neighborhoods so that we can see if we can get this under control and, keep our deer in the woods and fields and parks that they belong in.
Very good. Councilmember Gearbaugh.
Maybe I misunderstood, but did you want to show the actual presentation here that's attached to our packet, just to record it?
Sure, certainly.
Right, it's a good presentation. So.
Were you given that? Yeah.
So you know your email, whoever's email's up is being broadcast.
It's not mine.
Okay, good.
Well, why don't we try to load the presentation, Mr. Gearbaugh? Do you have any additional comments or questions at this time?
I think at this time, one of the issues is concerns, and I believe some of my other colleagues may mention, is that it does need to have some changes to the amount of hunting and what things can be achieved through proper husbandry management and whatever else happens at the state level. Currently, there's some things I think that could change that, because the number of hunters is dropping. There may be the need to address those other aspects, but that's at a larger state level that potentially could achieve some control through the townships where they do currently allow some hunting to occur.
We'll let our IT director continue to work on getting the presentation up on the screen. Mayor Pro Tem Dillon, as we await the presentation, are there any questions or concerns that you have?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I live on the west side, and my neighborhood is flanked by.
There it is.
There it is. You passed it.
Is flanked by cornfields on one side and the river on the other. So we are just a pathway for deer. It's nonstop, just literally herds of deer that are coming through. They are not afraid of people. They are not afraid of other animals. They are not afraid of cars. I have a lot of concern right now, and especially at this time of the year, that we're looking at a lot of potential vehicle accidents, you know. And so we're going to really need to do something about this. I mean, I appreciate what's in here about let's not, you know, first of all, we should not be baiting deer. Let's make that very clear. We should not be baiting deer. We do not need to feed them. There is plenty for them. But we are going to really need to take a hard look at this. And I think we really need to push on DNR to get us some data, to get us some options of what can be done in this community. I'm not looking at a call. I mean, there's other avenues. There has to be ways in which we can control the population in this area, because it is becoming a nuisance in neighborhoods at this point. It's not just them eating the vegetation. They're getting onto vehicles. They're getting into garages. There's a lot going on. They're not just randomly passing through your yard and eating your hostas. So I really want to make sure that we really start pushing on DNR, that we need some help in this aspect.
Thank you. If you'd like to proceed with the presentation, then I won't forget about you, Councilmember Lesh. We'll end with you if you have any additional questions or concerns.
Certainly. So the presentation just summarizes my initial comments. Basically, the background identifies that there has been an increase in deer population over the last few years, and that we are noticing it here in Saline, as Mayor Pro Tem Dillon just mentioned, not only in terms of getting into your garden, but impacts to property as well as to vehicles. Next slide. DNR is really the leader in terms of deer management, and their deer management initiative is really just now starting to look at some alternatives, whether that's going to be a requirement to remove a doe anytime you want to hunt a buck, or other activities that would reduce the number of doe within the population of deer. They have a 3-year study, and I will note Deputy City Manager Cole let me know she was able to communicate with DNR. They have been responsive and indicated they would be out to visit with us and talk more about their initiative. So I'm happy to make it a priority to either have them come to speak to this group or speak to Parks, or both, whatever works for their schedule. But certainly also partnering, just seeing what our other local units are doing as well. At this point, it doesn't seem like any of our neighbors have any specific dedicated programming. So the first stop is having that relationship with DNR to see what they're recommending. But at the very least, we know we're going to be rolling out an educational program. Sounds like there's consensus to want to move that up in terms of the timeline for when we're getting materials out. It will definitely feature and hit hard that, you should not be baiting, you should not be feeding the deer. Not only do we have an ordinance against that, but that exacerbates the problem. It does not help anyone. And then marketing throughout the year as we move forward. Sorry, next slide. So that's the educational campaign. And then last slide, just what I was referencing, the long-term potential strategies. If we're not seeing any reduction in the deer population at that point, we can look at certain non-lethal strategies. But ultimately, just kind of recommending at this point education and working with the DNR to see what their best practice standards are.
I appreciate and I support the recommendation of Councilmember Rice to have a representative from staff and or DNR present at an upcoming Parks Commission meeting, because that really is, those citizens are front line, and they can help us get messaging out and assist with this initiative. But unless there's objection to this from this dais, I'd also like to invite a representative from DER to speak at an upcoming city council meeting.
Sure. Yeah, we can send that invitation.
I think that would be very advantageous, and the sooner the better. I didn't forget about you, Mr. Lesh. Any additional comments or questions pertaining to this issue?
Basically, I'm a big advocate of not reinventing the wheel, and obviously Saline isn't an island in the middle of nothing, so we really need to collaborate with our adjoining municipalities, because I know for a fact Pittsfield has quite a deer problem too. I mean, you can go over to the high school any day and see a herd of deer on the soccer fields. So, I mean, if we can coordinate activities, ideas with any of our surrounding municipalities. I think it'd be a bonus for everybody.
Very good. Thank you.
One more comment.
Please.
I continue to hear no feeding the deer, but no feeding the wildlife, because the deer will eat what you're feeding the squirrels as well. They're not very picky.
Thank you. Last item is Depot Trail Agreement. I believe this was added by Councilmember Gearboss, so I will defer to him.
Correct. As you know, and maybe you don't, all the council knows, approximately, I don't know, 20 years ago or more, the city with the Saline Area Historical Society worked an agreement with the Ann Arbor Railroad, which has got a different name now, but it's like a $500 agreement to rent the Depot Trail. And the approach was it would be split between the Historical Society and the city. Well, as that trail has become more and more popular and more part of our overall non-motorized trail activities and planning to be expanded,